Hello Muglets, today's video topic is going to be on efficiency and resources. Before I get into that, I want to thank this video's sponsor, Opera GX, the world's first gaming browser. Opera GX comes with tons of really neat features that other web browsers don't. For example, over here in GX Control, you can set how much CPU and RAM the browser will use so it won't impact your game. As we know, Chrome uses a ton of RAM, while here you can say, okay, say you have 16 gigs like I do and you only want to allocate maybe 2 gigs or so at max to your web browser. Same with the CPU. If you have an older CPU, you can set it to use only a little bit of your CPU, so most of your CPU will stay focused on what you want it to stay focused on, your game. There's also a network limiter, which is very handy if you're a streamer like I am. You want it to use as little as possible while you're streaming to have the best stream quality possible if you're on a slightly weaker connection. Besides that, we have Twitch integration, so you can see which one of your favorite creators are live. There's also Discord integration, so you don't need to pull up the actual application. You can just press the little button there and boom, you're in Discord. It's pretty nice as well. GX Corner is another nice feature. It pulls together all the best deals you can see from this deals aggregator here, so you can get the best deals on any games you're looking to buy. New, upcoming, and interesting titles we have here. They also have a manually selected free games list up at the top as well if you want to try something new. Then we have game trailers and game news. This is stuff I really like as well, just to kind of keep up to date with what's going on in the gaming world. Over here you can customize a lot about how it looks. I really like the aesthetic customization going on here, your wallpaper background. It's just really easy and simple to do. There are also some other really cool features down here, like a free VPN, forced dark pages, which comes in handy a lot. And as you can see from Task Manager, with the same tabs open, Opera GX is using much less RAM. But yeah, I'll have a link to download Opera GX in the description down below, so make sure to check it out. It's a really fantastic web browser with tons of useful features, so I'm sure you'll enjoy it. But anyway, back to the video. So when it comes to Genshin Impact and a lot of other games where there's, a sort of resin or stamina type system, resources can be very scarce and they can be very valuable because they're always locked behind, time-restricted things. When you want more, you're just going to go to a Blossom of Wealth. When you want XP books, the Blossom of Revelation, etc., etc. But how should you spend those resources once you have them? This is the question. This is the problem. Let's go ahead and start with resin. Should you spend your resin on the Cryo Regis Vine if you're trying to farm gladiator pieces? Of course not. Cryo Regis Vine, as well as all the other world bosses, are the only way to farm gladiator, outside of a couple per week from Spiral Abyss. However, you should only ever go for bosses once you've decided to raise a character and they need some stuff here. These materials, as well as these materials, for the most part you can only get from world bosses. So of course, if you're raising a character and you have a lot of confidence and conviction in this character you're raising, I did make a video on that as well if you want to check it out, then yes, you literally have no other choice. But there is also something to be aware of, and this comes a little bit more down to time efficiency. World bosses are open every single day, whereas with the exception of Sunday, all of the weapon material and the talent material are only open on certain days of the week. So if you get a new character and you want to raise them quickly, that should always be the first thing you're checking. Do I need material to raise the weapon I have? Do I need talent books to raise my character's talents? If the answer is yes, and one or both of those domains are open that day, you should consider farming them first, at least until you're satisfied with their weapon and talent levels. We should also talk about artifact farming a bit, as this is where a lot of your resin is going to go as well. I wouldn't put a super strong focus on artifact farming until you are AR45. Of course, get a couple of decent 4-star sets before then, but the majority of your artifact farming should come at AR45 or later, because you are guaranteed a 5-star drop there. When it comes to weekly bosses, the most expensive way to spend your resin, absolutely do them every single week, no exceptions. You get very important and needed materials for later character development. If you're lucky enough, you also get some prototypes, which can make some very valuable weapons, and potentially some other miscellaneous character essential material that you would get from world bosses. Even if you're free to play, I would still recommend doing the 50 primogems per day for the resin. It's just, there are a lot of things to farm. I would say 60 extra resin per day is way more worth it than less than 1/3 of a pull from gacha. We should also talk about when to use your fragile resin. I would definitely recommend holding on to this until you are AR45. Again, at AR45, you're guaranteed a 5-star artifact from the artifact dungeons, and that is just really good. While we're here, let's go ahead and talk about summons as well. When it comes to Acquaint Feints, you can use those as you get them on the standard banner here. This will never change. Sometimes the art here changes, but what is actually in the banner doesn't. There's no need to save up for a 10 pull. It makes no difference unless you just want to do 10 summons at once. just because of preference, then feel free. However, when it comes to the other two banners, these do change every 3 weeks. So for any intertwined fate you happen to run across, you should save them until a banner comes up that you're actually interested in. When it comes to the currency you actually get back from summoning, which is Star Glitter and Stardust, this also comes down to personal preference. I would just advise highly against buying anything past weapons. All of this stuff is farmable, and as long as you're somewhat diligent, you'll always have enough. I would also advise against buying most of the weapons. They're generally not that great, although some do have their uses, like the Black Cliff Warbow for Ganyu is quite good, but I digress. In general, I would focus on the characters. They swap out once a month. They are more expensive than anything else in the shop, but they are a character. So if you don't have a character that you really want, say for example Bennett, keep an eye out here. Though when it comes to Bennett specifically, he was here rather recently, so you'll have to wait a while. You can also purchase more summons. I generally advise against this, especially Acquaint Fates, as, you know, what you get from there is typically pretty random, and it can even be a weapon. And when you're going to be getting Intertwined Fates, you're guaranteed a character after 90 pulls. Generally though, once you have 34, the power to pick a character is very strong rather than just gambling on these summons here. So that's what I would recommend with your Star Glitter exchange. When it comes to Stardust exchange, that's a little bit harder. Personally, I would suggest the 5 Intertwined and the 5 Acquaint Fates first. After that, if you have extra and you still have those 750 Stardust for the next months, the Mora is a pretty decent value as well. 10 Stardust for 10k. I wouldn't buy it for 20 though. Then we have the other general progression mats like XP and ore. I usually wouldn't advise going for ore, as you can craft a lot of it if you're diligent with farming your ores and bringing them to the blacksmith. Adventure experience, on the other hand, you can only really get from ley lines, mostly. You can get a teeny tiny bit of XP just from fighting monsters, but that's so tiny it doesn't even matter. So in my opinion, in order of importance is going to be Intertwined Fates first, Acquaint Fates, the Mora, and then Adventure XP. Unless you're spending money, you probably won't have enough to buy most of that stuff, so just sticking to the Intertwined Fates, if that's what you can do, is what I would recommend. Next, let's talk about Adventure XP. It's pretty straightforward. It has one use, and that is to level up your characters. It is a very important use, obviously. Again, you can get it from ley lines and battle pass. There is one note here that I want to add, that from level 80 to 90 is incredibly expensive when it comes to XP books and Mora. So unless you truly don't have anything else to spend on, I would recommend keeping your characters at level 80. I do have quite a few level 90 characters of my own, but that's just because I'm much further into the game. Didn't have anyone else on the mind that I wanted to raise, so I was like, yeah, sure. The stat bump they get from 80 to 90 is also rather small, and not really worth it unless you don't have any plans for a while. Ascending them from 80 to 90, however, is another story. While it is still very expensive here, requiring 20 of these little cores and 6 of these golden gemstone doodads. Once you do that, you can max out your talent. So for your main DPS, I would recommend at the very least getting them their 6 stars so you can enhance their skills. Next, let's talk about Mora. Arguably the most important currency in the game. Nearly every progression type thing requires it, and it's not all that easy to get. You can save up your Mora for an entire month and then have it be gone in the span of a few seconds. That's just how it is. Talents are probably one of the most important, but as you can see from talent level 9 to 10 is 700,000 gold. That is massive. Farming that amount of gold, best case scenario from the Blossom of Wealth here, would cost you 240, and that amount of resin takes 32 hours to recover. And that's not even counting the resin you need to spend for the books, but I digress. It's expensive. And this is kind of the same case when it comes to, you know, raising your characters from level 80 to 90. Sure, it's worth it at the very, very end game when you don't have much else to do or don't have any other characters you want to focus on, then yeah, you know, it's more maximum damage or utility or healing for healers, etc., etc. It's just another case of diminishing returns, and that's something you should always be aware of when you're spending your gold. We also have artifacts. The only way to raise them is with gold and other artifacts. Each individual upgrade doesn't seem all that expensive with 22k here, but it definitely adds up as each character can hold 5 different artifacts with a maximum upgrade of plus 20. I do want to give Genshin Impact kudos here for there not being any upgrade RNG. There's lots of other different types of RNG, but at least you kind of know the set cost for raising an artifact to plus 20. I do want to touch on artifacts for a little bit because there are a few interesting mechanics. For example, we have a level 16 4-star here. We can throw that in there and get a pretty nice plus 4 boost with just one artifact because it's been previously raised. In a lot of other games I've played, this would require much more gold than just placing a plus 0 in there. Because, you know, when you place a plus 0 in there, you only get this much of a level versus an entire 4 levels. But you can see the cost is the same. You don't get all of the XP back that you put in, but it is a good enough amount. Plus, there's the possibility for you to get lucky and get a 2x enhancement rate, and definitely get back more XP than you spent. I would like to say only raise really good artifacts and spend your gold wisely in that way, so you don't have to cannibalize artifacts, but the reality of the situation is it's really hard to get a good artifact. So with that in mind, and knowing that you can cannibalize your older, weaker, worse artifacts without too much of a loss, go ahead and raise mediocre artifacts in the beginning because they are important to character strength. However, once you do have an okay set of artifacts on your important characters, don't swap them out with just a little bit better artifacts. At that point, you do want to wait until you get actually good artifacts to replace them with, because even though you can get a decent amount of your XP back when you cannibalize older, weaker artifacts, at the end of the day, it's still a waste of Mora. Then we have weapons. It's pretty much the same story here with diminishing returns. You can see it costs almost 250,000 gold, a ton of my ore, and, you know, we only get a little bit more base attack, a little bit more physical damage bonus. Only ever go to 90 on anything if you are sure that there's no one else you really care about at the moment. And for a little while. The general advice, which still holds true today, is to focus on your main DPS, your main unit, with all these resources that we've been talking about today. If you're limited in some of the resources required to raise their skills, then you should be spending your resin on domains for their talent books, domains for their artifact set, blossoms of wealth for the same stuff if required, etc., etc. Main point is, all these resources should go into your main character first. Once they are maxed for your current AR level, again until we get to AR 50 and this level 90 stuff, then you move on to your second most important unit, so on and so forth. There's also something else I want to say, and that is just because you have resources doesn't mean you need to spend them. This is apparently a decently huge problem within the community, because anytime anyone sees I have a decent amount of gold or enhancement or etc., they're always freaking out, and it's like, well, I'm just not really using it because I don't really need to right now. It's always good to have a little stash on hand in case you get a character randomly that you've always wanted to build, so that you can actually build them without having to wait, you know, weeks or months until, you know, you get the resin you need to go grab all their stuff. You know, you have a little bit prepared already. So you should make each decision somewhat conscious at least, and ask yourself if you really need to spend these resources on whatever you're doing. And yeah, that's basically it. This does kind of tie in a lot to who you should raise next, because who you should raise next dictates where your resources are going. So if you want my take on that, you can check out that video as well. But yeah, I suppose that'll pretty much do it. Once again, make sure to check out Opera GX in the description down below. Leaving a like on this video if you did happen to enjoy is always greatly appreciated as well. Thanks, as always, for watching, and until next time.